Good afternoon, members. May be seated. Call on the Minister of Education and Early Childhood Development for prayers.
Let us pray. Prions le Seigneur. O Lord, our Heavenly Father, high and mighty, King of kings, Lord of lords, the only ruler of princes, who dost from thy throne behold all dwellers upon earth. Most heartily we beseech thee with thy favour to behold our most gracious sovereign Lord, King Charles, and so replenish him with the grace of thy Holy Spirit, that he may always incline to thy will and walk in thy way. Endue him plenteously with heavenly gifts. Grant him in health and wealth long to live. Strengthen him that he may vanquish and overcome all his enemies. And finally, after this life, may he attain everlasting joy and felicity through Jesus Christ our Lord. Dieu plein de grâce, nous vous implorons humblement en faveur de la province en général, et plus particulièrement du lieutenant-gouverneur et de l'Assemblée législative, assemblée en ce moment sous l'égide de nos très pieux et gracieux souverains, qu'il vous plaise de diriger, de faire fructifier leurs délibérations, plus pour votre plus grande gloire et sécurité, l'honneur et le bien-être de notre souverain et de notre province. Que toutes choses soient par leurs travaux si bien ordonnées et établies sur les fondements les plus solides, que la paix, le bonheur, la vérité, la justice, la religion et la piété puissent régner parmi nous pendant toutes les générations. Pour eux et pour nous, nous vous demandons ces faveurs et toutes les autres qui sont nécessaires, au nom et par l'intercession de Jésus-Christ, notre divin Seigneur et Sauveur. Amen. Together let us pray the Lord's Prayer. Ensemble, prions notre Père. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive them that trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Car c'est à toi qu'appartient le règne, la puissance et la gloire pour les siècles des siècles. Amen.
Introduction of guests. Condolences to the Minister of Agriculture, Aquaculture and Fisheries.
Mr. Speaker, if I could beg a few seconds extra, I would appreciate it. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to express my sincere condolences to the family and friends of Ed Howard of Perth Andover, who passed away on November 4th. A loving husband, father, stepfather, grandfather, brother, and uncle, Ed enjoyed spending time with his family and friends, and he was well-liked and highly involved in his community. He was an active volunteer supporting many organizations, clubs, and charities, and coached various sport teams over the years, but athletics was not only Ed's interest. You could also find him on stage and on the square dance floor. Mr. Speaker, Ed was a member of the Royal Canadian Legion Branch No. 36 in Perth Andover for more than 40 years and served as president on 2 full terms. He was instrumental in securing funds for the maintenance and creation of a stunning new cenotaph in Perth Andover and Aroostook. For 35 years, Ed wore his iron ring as an electrical engineer with pride, and in recent years travelled to areas across the East Coast in the United States to help with power restoration efforts when needed. Ed had a contagious smile and laugh and made an impression on everyone he met. There were very few who could say no to Ed, which is why he was a valuable member of any organization when it came to fundraising. As a long-standing member of my riding association, it was always a pleasure to travel the back roads with Ed and listen to the stories because he knew everyone. Mr. Speaker, we hope that the many happy memories that folks have of Ed, whether it be on adventures to Bald Peak or Davidson Lake, bring a smile and comfort at his passing. On behalf of the members of the Legislature, I extend heartfelt sympathy to those affected by his loss. Thank you. Merci, Mr. Speaker.
Deputy the Shipping Lamech-Nisku.
Monsieur le Président, je me lève en chambre aujourd'hui pour rendre un dernier hommage au petit Thomas Haché, décédé le samedi 5 novembre à l'âge de 11 ans. Le soir même, près de 200 personnes se sont réunies pour relâcher des dizaines de ballons bleus et blancs qui ont rapidement peuplé un coin du ciel en mémoire du jeune homme ou du jeune garçon qui manquera certainement à tous ses amis d'école. Il était le fils de Nancy et Steve Haché et il demeurait à Chupagan. Thomas est parti joindre ou rejoindre sa Mimi adorée, Mme Muriel Haché. En plus de ses parents, il laisse dans le deuil sa sœur Chloé, ses frères Ronnie, Hugo et Nico, ainsi que ses grands-pères Adalbert et Jean-Guy. Thomas manquera énormément ses oncles et ses tantes, à son parrain, à sa marraine, ainsi qu'aux cousins et cousines. Je demande à mes collègues de se joindre à moi pour offrir les condoléances de la Chambre à la famille et aux amis de Thomas Haché. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
The Minister of Environment and Climate Change.
Mr. Speaker, a good friend of both you and I passed away on November 11, 2022. Heather Wart was known in the community as a retired teacher, Rotarian, historian, and curler. She had a creative spirit and enjoyed crafts. Her love for fun and laughter will be missed by all who knew her, and her commitment to serving the community was an inspiration to many. Mr. Speaker, as you know, Heather was on our teaching staff at Bell Elementary School for a number of years with your wife, Chris, my wife, Marcia, and myself as school principal. Heather was a loving and caring teacher who left a positive impact on many students, teachers, and parents as well. Heather will be missed by her husband, Douglas Wart, children Jody and Heidi, stepchildren Julie and Jill, grandchildren, step-grandchildren, extended family, and friends. Heather had a very strong family connection with her siblings, Beverly, Brenda, and Roger. She was predecessed by her sister, Georgina, and infant sister, Charity. Mr. Speaker, we will miss her incredible sense of humor.
Message of congratulations and recognition. The Minister responsible for Opportunities, New Brunswick.
Mr. Speaker, today I am proud to rise to highlight the wonderful achievement of a pair of bright New Brunswick students. Actually, describing them as bright might be an understatement. Ethan Nyland and Tess Kasher were recently named recipients of the prestigious Rhodes Scholarship for the University of Oxford. Ethan is a student at St. Thomas University who hails from St. John. Tess, meanwhile, grew up in Qatar before moving to Whitehorse, Yukon. She studies at Mount Allison University now. According to the Rhodes Trust website, out of the 11 available scholarships for Canadian students, only 2 are offered to students from the Maritime region. I have read that Tess will pursue Victorian literature at Oxford, while Ethan has plans to study politics. This is a wonderful accomplishment for both of these students, and I would ask all of my colleagues to join me in offering heartfelt congratulations to Tess and Ethan. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Deputy Denison Madawaska Centre.
Monsieur le Président, lors du gala de la PME du 29 octobre dernier, la CBDC Madawaska a remis le prix Jeune Entrepreneur 2022 à Dominique Babineau. Dominique Babineau est propriétaire de DB Solutions Marketing, une entreprise qu'elle a elle-même fondée en 2018. Dominique est une jeune femme passionnée du monde des affaires et du marketing depuis son jeune âge. Dès qu'elle a l'opportunité d'aider un entrepreneur avec sa stratégie marketing, elle saute sur l'occasion. Elle est très fière de faire progresser des projets, des idées, des causes et des entreprises aux 4 coins de la province. Son entreprise se nomme DB Solutions Marketing puisque son approche est axée sur la solution et l'action. En plus de ses services au niveau de marketing, notons entre autres qu'elle offre des mandats de redressement pour entreprises établies, des mandats de développement d'affaires pour entreprises en démarrage, ainsi que de la formation de réseaux sociaux, services à la clientèle et en vente. Encore une fois, félicitations Dominique et merci de continuer à appuyer les entreprises à croître et à développer dans notre région. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
The member for Fredericton South and Leader Party.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'd also like to rise and congratulate Ethan Nyland and Tess Kasher on them being awarded Rhodes Scholarships. I'd like to amplify a little bit of what the Minister said about their studies. Ethan is a fourth-year student completing a major in political science at St. Thomas University while pursuing an honours in great books. He's a Dean List student and Francis M. McLaughlin Scholarship recipient. In partnership with the Stu Campus Ministry, he recently founded a community tutoring program to support those working to get their GED. Tess is a fourth-year honour English student with a minor in religious studies at Mount Allison University. She's the recipient of many academic awards, including the Bell Scholarship, one of Mount Allison's most prestigious entrance awards, the McKeel Scholarship for achieving the highest level of academic achievement in English, and the Ebert Trust Scholarship recognizing excellence in religious studies. So, Mr. Speaker, you can't recognize excellence and hard work enough, so I would invite once again all members to join me in congratulating Ethan Nyland and Tess Kasher on being chosen as Rhodes Scholars.
The Deputy Restigouche West.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Pour la première fois de l'histoire, les équipes masculines et féminines de soccer senior A de la même école remportaient les titres de champions provinciaux la même année. Cet honneur historique va aux deux équipes de l'école O80 de Dalhousie qui remportaient les prestigieuses bannières de l'Association sportive interscolaire du Nouveau-Brunswick et les titres de champions et championnes provinciaux en soccer senior A le 5 novembre dernier. Les 17 filles et 20 garçons ont défendu les couleurs des Cyclones de l'école O80 avec détermination, agilité et résilience tout au long de l'année et les placent maintenant parmi les meilleurs au Nouveau-Brunswick. Les Cyclones O80 sont la preuve, encore une fois, que le Restigouche est fort. Je tiens à féliciter et remercier les entraîneurs et les équipes d'encadrement, ainsi que tous les parents et supporters de nos jeunes championnes et champions du Restigouche. L'année 2022 restera gravée à tout jamais dans les corridors et les mémoires de l'école O80. Comme ancien Cyclone, sachez que c'est toute une communauté qui est fière de notre jeunesse. Bravo et go Cyclone go! Bravo.
Statements by members. The Deputy to Edmundston, Madawaska-Leelac, Edmundston.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Le Premier ministre semble être décidé à utiliser les enjeux linguistiques pour semer la discorde. Peut-être pense-t-il qu'en attisant le débat linguistique, il détournera l'attention de la crise en santé, de la crise de l'itinérance, de la crise du logement et du coût de la vie qui ne cesse d'augmenter. Ce gouvernement est déconnecté des vrais besoins des gens. Le Premier ministre doit mettre fin à cette croisade honteuse contre le français et consacrer ses efforts à améliorer le sort de la population. People who go to our emergency rooms must get medical attention. People who are homeless must get shelters. People struggling to pay rent and heat must get meaningful relief. New Brunswickers' quality of life has declined. They are struggling to get by, and when they ask themselves if they are better off now than they were 4 years ago, the answer is a resounding no.
The member for Farrington South and Leader of his party.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just now, students were rallying out in front of the Legislature demanding climate action organized by the Students for Sustainability from St. Thomas University. They want a future that is livable, and that is not where we are headed at the moment. The UN Secretary General says we're on the highway to hell with our foot on the accelerator. Those students are looking to everyone in this House to show leadership, to help our society take its foot off the accelerator, to implement measures that will help us reduce our consumption of energy and increase the supply of locally produced food, to adopt policies that will green our electricity grid, supplying with electricity generated by harnessing renewable sources of energy that are eternal and cost-free, like the sun, the wind, and the flowing water, to create public transportation infrastructure that reduces the need for driving so you can get from here by rail and bus, to invest in active transportation so you can easily and safely get around our cities on foot and by bicycle. They want a future where they can flourish, not the climate hell we will descend into if we don't take our foot off the accelerator.
The member for Oromocto, Lincoln, Farrington.
Mr. Speaker, this government is always doing what they can to help and protect the most vulnerable New Brunswickers, and we need New Brunswickers to do their part too. The Pfizer vaccine is available for children aged 6 months to 5 years. The Moderna vaccine is also available for this age group. Mr. Speaker, this government urges all parents to book their appointments if their children fall into this age group and help protect their children and classmates and slow the spread of this virus and reduce the effects for those that are most at risk. Parents are also encouraged to get their boosters as well as to make their appointments for their children over age 5 to receive theirs. Let's protect the most vulnerable New Brunswickers together. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, today is National Housing Day, and I'll say it again. There are people in New Brunswick sleeping outdoors, in tents, under bridges, and in cardboard boxes. Yesterday, St. John police say they responded to a call from someone who had been walking near a woody area when they found a dead person in a tent. Advocate for the homeless Trevor Goodwin, addressing Moncton City Council, said, "We need money spent. We need assistance for this. We have people that will die outside this winter if we don't have places repurposed." Mayor Don Arnold said the province's Minister of Social Development should be involved in the discussion. She said she met with the Deputy Minister in late September and said that they indicated the province would be stepping up and that they had this under control. With a $774 million surplus, we do have the fiscal capacity. So it begs the question, when will this government step up? And what is the plan to have it under control? If we are to be judged on how we looked after the least fortunate amongst us, this government will get a failing grade. Thank you.
The Deputy to Kent North.
Monsieur le Président, alors que la COP 27 se termine, je pense qu'il serait important de parler d'agriculture. Les petites fermes productrices d'aliments ont compris depuis longtemps que le système alimentaire industriel est un pollueur de premier plan qui a non seulement alimenté la crise climatique, mais qui est également responsable de l'accaparement des terres et de l'eau et d'autres formes d'extractivisme qui séparent les gens de leur territoire. Une transition juste est nécessaire au Nouveau-Brunswick. Ayant perdu 20 % de nos fermes dans les derniers 5 ans, nous ne pouvons pas en perdre une seule ferme de plus. Pour y arriver, notre ministère doit revoir profondément comment il aborde la question de l'agriculture. Développer une politique pour une souveraineté alimentaire, adopter la Déclaration des Nations Unies sur les droits des paysans et paysannes et d'autres personnes travaillant dans les zones rurales, faciliter la coopération, l'accès aux marchés locaux et aux opportunités de formation et de partage de connaissances, soutenir une transition vers des pratiques d'agroécologie et encore plus. Monsieur le Président, la souveraineté alimentaire refroidit la planète et il est temps d'agir.
Member for St. Croix.
Mr. Speaker, November is Family Violence Prevention Month. One thing is certain, violence does not belong in the homes of New Brunswickers. This government is taking necessary steps to do what we can to eliminate violence in homes by recently introducing Bill 17, putting in place support to help eliminate intimate partner violence. Eliminating family and relationship violence takes unity and support with communities, organizations, and this government all working together. I am proud of the men and women who, through strength and courage, saved themselves and their families. I know as a province we will always do what we can to help eliminate family violence. Together we must continue to promote education and awareness programs on family violence to ensure that the people we care most about have a safe place to live. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Deputy to Restoration.
Monsieur le Président, depuis quelques années, durant sa mise à jour financière trimestrielle, ce gouvernement tente de nous faire croire que nous sommes toujours en situation déficitaire, que nous nagerions dans l'encre rouge, que l'économie va de mal en pire et que ce n'est pas le temps d'investir pour aider les gens. Toutefois, Monsieur le Président, on sait maintenant qu'avec la révision stratégique des programmes du gouvernement Galland et les généreux transferts d'Ottawa, notre province nage dans des surplus de plus en plus grands. En décembre prochain, le gouvernement va présenter un nouveau budget en capital. Il n'y a plus d'excuses. On se doit d'investir dans nos infrastructures. Et la région Chaleur, la région du Resté-Gauche ont besoin de clôtures pour animaux sauvages. Des vies en dépendent, Monsieur le Premier ministre.
Member for Carlton York.
Mr. Speaker, there's some big elections coming up at the end of the month, but thankfully New Brunswickers do not have to wait. Mr. Speaker, advanced polls were open this Saturday and Monday, and we saw thousands of New Brunswickers participating in democracy and casting their vote for the upcoming local government and rural advisory committee elections. Mr. Speaker, elections are November the 28th. When you head to your local voting station, do not forget your voter card. This makes the process much more efficient for workers and New Brunswickers. If you go to vote and are not on the voters list, you'll need to provide some identification. Please choose the best future for New Brunswick at all levels. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Oral questions. The chef de l'opposition official.
Mr. Speaker, the latest report from the Child and Youth Advocate warns about a shocking decline in children's literacy rates. A decline in literacy rates of almost 30% in 10 years is alarming, to say the least, and should focus the attention of the department. The Child and Youth Advocate called for urgent action to stop the decline, suggesting steps to ensure consistent school improvement, the use of literacy specialists, ensuring tools are in place for early detection and assessment of learning and behavioral challenges, and addressing family literacy by providing community resources, to name just a few suggestions that the Child and Youth Advocate outlined. And this is serious, Mr. Speaker. Last year, 40% of fourth-grade children didn't meet literacy standards, and we're seeing the lowest rates in 18 years. So will the Minister advise as to what specific measures have been taken to address this most serious issue, and what other initiatives are under consideration?
The Minister of Education and Early Childhood Development.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you to the member opposite for the question. I was at the presentation last week, and I did agree with Mr. Lamrock. I think one of the things that he said that struck me the most was from K to 2, we teach children to read, and from 3 onwards, they read to learn. So I would agree wholeheartedly with that. We need to look at where we were, what we were doing when we had great success with reading. I happened to be at the elementary level during that time, and we had literacy mentors working directly in classrooms on the Anglophone side, working with teachers and taking students out in small groups for catch-up. The recent results from the Francophone side, when I've investigated that, they're primarily due to the pandemic. We've had a drop in reading scores because of that. If we look prior to the pandemic on the Francophone side, the reading scores were on the rise. There's no reason to believe that returning to our previous practice on the Francophone side that won't continue. Thank you.
Chef de l'Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and it's good to hear that he does agree with the Child and Youth Advocate, but we also need to heed the warning from the Child Youth Advocate, who is saying that we're seeing the lowest rates in 18 years, and showing us solutions to address the problem, Mr. Speaker. And we know this minister has a hard time listening to teachers and parents who are offering advice, but he has to listen to those that are on the front lines, Mr. Speaker. We know children are suffering after being left out of classrooms for the last couple of years because of COVID-19. That has contributed to these literacy rates. The minister we've been calling for needs to bring forward a comprehensive plan to address the catch-up that we need in our schools, Mr. Speaker, addressing literacy at the same time. So where are those resources? Where are the resources to give students the best chance of success, to do the assessments necessary for behavioral challenges and learning difficulties? When can we see a comprehensive strategy from this government to address those issues?
Minister of Education and Early Childhood Development.
Thank you kindly, Mr. Speaker. The question from the opposite side is certainly interesting. It's refreshing to see the new Liberal Party. Sounds a lot like the old one under Brian Gallant. Being the Minister of Early Childhood Development and Education for, I think, just a little over 5 weeks now, I'm not quite sure how anybody could conclude that I don't listen to teachers, since I just started, or parents for that matter, and I think that's a wee bit of a stretch. One size doesn't fit all. I certainly know that the former president of the New Brunswick Teachers Association has a lot to say on the subject. And, you know, if he's got stuff to suggest, then he can do that with me after. However, one size does not fit all of our students. We're looking at where we need to provide catch-up across the board, not just in reading and writing, and we're going to continue to do that and support our students individually for the best needs of our students. Thank you.
Monsieur le Président, ce ministre est là depuis 5 mois, oui, mais ce gouvernement est là depuis 4 ans. Et puis c'est 4 ans d'inaction, Monsieur le Président, de ce gouvernement. Il faut s'assurer que nos enfants ne prennent pas de retard sur le plan scolaire, et ça devrait être la priorité numéro 1, pas l'abolition de programmes et d'autres choses. On devrait être là, le focus doit être sur le retard sur le plan scolaire pour nos enfants. Le NBTA a averti que les enseignants et enseignantes ont été soumis à un stress en raison de la pandémie et de la pénurie de personnel. Mais on leur demande de faire plus en leur donnant moins, Monsieur le Président. Ce gouvernement, comme j'ai dit, coupe des programmes efficaces en éducation. Ils accumulent des surplus énormes et n'investissent pas pour s'assurer que nous disposons d'un nombre suffisant d'enseignants et d'autres spécialistes de l'éducation pour faire face à cette crise, des spécialistes qu'on a besoin pour nos enfants. Le ministre devrait changer son focus, de couper les programmes et de faire les investissements au lieu pour faire un vrai bon programme d'éducation.
Deputy, the Minister of Education and Early Childhood Development.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président, et merci pour la question. Je me demande qui écrive ces questions-là. je ne suis pas ministre pendant 4 ans, c'est seulement à peu près 5, c'est juste un peu plus de 5 semaines. Et on ne coupe pas des programmes. En particulier, j'ai eu une réunion hier avec le côté francophone et les DG, et on a parlé à propos des déficits qu'ils ont soumis à cause de la pandémie, à cause de l'inflation et toutes sortes d'autres choses, et on les avait assurés qu'on va payer leurs frais. Nous continuons, on ne coupe aucun programme. On continue de faire le travail nécessaire pour s'adresser aux besoins de nos élèves, pour les aider à améliorer leurs apprentissages et pour créer un système d'éducation magnifique ici au Nouveau-Brunswick. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Deputy to Madawaska-Lac-Edmonton.
Mr. Speaker, with the proposed French for All program expected to replace the early French immersion, the Minister and the Premier want all students to have a conversational level of French. The Common European Framework of Reference for Languages identifies 4 settings for the conversational use of French, and they are in a personal setting, like between family and friends, where there is not a great concern about fluency and accuracy. In a public setting, where you can be understood, but you are not too concerned about accuracy. In a work-related setting, using French in a job or profession, where fluency and accuracy is important. And finally, in educational setting, when you are speaking with educated French speakers with confidence, fluency, and accuracy. Which of these settings is the new French for All program preparing our students?
The Minister of Education and Early Childhood Development.
Thank you kindly again, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to the member opposite for the question. It's a little ironic to hear, criticisms about the decline in language arts and literacy skills, and not meeting those targets, and yet referring to French immersion and referring to conversational French as where we want to be. We're looking at improving the Anglophone school system. We're looking at implementing a universal immersive program for all our students. In doing that, we're going to address streaming, the issues created by streaming in our Anglophone school system. We're going to level the playing field for all our students so that they can all have an equal chance and equal opportunity at achieving. This idea that somehow we're watering down a program is simply false. And I wish that the members opposite would stop doing that.
Member for Madawaska-Lac-Edmonton.
Mr. Speaker, yes, leveling the playing field, but we don't know what the field is look like. We are hearing that the minister's plan is for kindergarten and grade 1 students to receive 90 minutes of French per day as second language instruction. Is it in the intention of this government to prepare future generations to be confident speakers in their second language, or is it to simply be able to have limited interaction with family and friends?
Minister of Education and Early Childhood Development.
Mr. Speaker, we want to create a bilingual population in our province. We want to start in grade 1 next year. Hopefully, eventually we'll be kindergarten, grade 1, grade 2, right on through the system. We're going to have a universal program, an immersive French experience. I don't know where the member opposite gets 90 minutes a day. The exact percentage is yet to be determined. That will be rolled out in December. And, this is something that we're serious about. We want the best for all our children. We want the best for all our Anglophone students. We want to create a universal, a world-class education system to give our students the best chance at success that they possibly can have in the world. So whether that be wherever they're working at conversational level of French, and through school they'll have an opportunity to specialize as they would in any other subject, math, science, to improve their French skills. We'll look at language.
Time, Minister. Member for Madawaska-Lac-Edmonton.
Monsieur le Président, Actuellement, environ 14 % des élèves sont exemptés de cours de français dans les écoles anglophones. Quel niveau d'exemption sera autorisé dans le cadre du nouveau programme?
Minister of Education and Early Childhood Development.
Monsieur le Président, quand on commence un programme universel, ça veut dire universel. Donc, ça va être pour tous nos élèves. Alors, on ne va pas mettre à côté certains élèves parce qu'ils ne peuvent pas. Tout le monde peut parler français, peuvent apprendre le français comme n'importe quelle autre langue. Personnellement, je n'ai pas parlé français au niveau des cours secondaires. C'était quelque chose que j'avais appris à l'université, l'Université Saint-Thomas puis l'Université Laval, puis je l'avais pratiqué à travers ma vie. Même que je ne parle pas, comme j'ai déjà dit ici dans cette chambre, le français du roi, je crois que je peux bien communiquer avec les autres personnes. Il y avait une époque où j'avais écrit d'une façon quotidienne le français, je l'avais fait bien. Ça fait assez longtemps que je ne l'avais pas fait. Alors, j'ai de la difficulté à écrire en français. Il faut pratiquer après l'école.
Prime Minister. Member for Bathurst, West Beresford.
Mr. Speaker, a budget is an interesting tool. It is more than just numbers and columns. A budget is a plan. It tells a story that shows what a team, an organization, or even a government's intentions are. In the last case, it should also reflect how it will impact the quality of life for its target audience. For example, the province is now anticipating another large surplus for the end of the year, but for many people in New Brunswick, this surplus will bring them very little relief or help. In this context, we would anticipate that one of the departments that would see the most increased spending is social development, where the need is greatest. Yet in his Q1 update, the Minister of Finance predicted that by year-end, this department was going to spend $1.97 billion. 3 months later, now he anticipates that the same department will spend $1.477 billion, a full $20 million less. Can the Minister of Finance explain why he anticipates to spend less money as the need continues to grow?
Minister of Finance and Treasury Board.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, to the member across the way for the question. You know what? What we plan to do here with our budget and with every budget is to serve New Brunswickers. That's what we plan to do. We've had a lot of talk today about the children and the education system, and yes, we plan to budget. We plan to budget for the next generation. You've heard me say that before, and it's absolutely true. We plan to budget more for social development and for health care as we have in the past. Social assistance rates increased under this government over this budget. Hear, hear. The health plan was financed over this budget. We continue to help New Brunswickers in social development and education and health plan throughout our students' population with PEDAL, helping out with the no-interest loans on student loans. Don't know why I couldn't think of that. We continue. Money is not the only solution, but it's the tool that we have in Finance and Treasury Board, and we continue to help New Brunswickers and will continue to help New Brunswickers in the future, Mr. Speaker.
Deputy to Bathurst, West Bedford.
Well, there you go, Mr. Speaker. Yeah, they are going to spend more money because I look at Q2 predictions, and they're going to spend a little bit more because things cost more in environment, in finance, in health, in justice and public safety, in DNR, in Opportunities New Brunswick, in PEDAL, but they are not planning to spend in social development, like you just said. 20 million less. Why? Are things not is social development not subject to inflation? Is cost not? I'm getting it from the Finance Minister's report right here. You should read it. It's really interesting. It says nothing.
Minister of Finance and Treasury Board.
Well, I didn't hear a question at the end of that, Mr. Speaker, but we'll continue talking about what we are doing right. We're doing tons of stuff right, ladies and gentlemen, here in the House. We're planning for the future, as I said. We're helping people. Housing. We added more money to housing. We're lowering taxes, personal income tax. We're raising the basic personal amount. Mr. Speaker, we continue to budget appropriately, rolling out that new health plan. The debt is going down. Our net debt to GDP is well below 30 now. It's running like about 26%. We think we can have it down to 24. That means paying less servicing the debt. That means more money available to help New Brunswickers. That's what this government does. You talk about a surplus. It's a surplus that's being used to help New Brunswickers. That's what this government does.
Hear, hear. Hear, hear. Member for Bathurst, West Bedford.
Mr. Speaker, The question is, why are you spending less in social development? You had a plan at the beginning of the year to spend a certain amount with all kinds of programs and intentions to spend. Things have gone up. The Premier and the Minister always tell us how things are costing more now because of inflation. They can't not be subject to this. So there's more costs, it's more expensive. Why are you predicting to spend less in social development when all the other departments are going to be more? And I say less for social development because there is an outcry in New Brunswick for more help. Everybody wants more help. This government keeps saying they're going to bring more help, and they put on paper they're going to pay less money. Where are you going to get the money if it's not from that department? Minister, why is it less?
It's interesting to see the shallow questions, the shallow comments continue. Mr. Speaker, their view would be, okay, well, if we just put more money into it, everything is fine. Well, Mr. Speaker, they've proven over and over and over again that doesn't work. But we've said, everywhere we put money, Mr. Speaker, we expect your tax dollars to work for you, work for us, Mr. Speaker. So the housing program that's out, Mr. Speaker, the change in the social assistance programs, Mr. Speaker, the reductions in taxes, so more people will want to work, the reductions in interest rates, Mr. Speaker, that protects our future generations because we won't be paying more and more as interest rates go up. So, Mr. Speaker, I know the members opposite have no future in mind but their own, Mr. Speaker, and they would put money just to have a headline, but it is so shallow to look at a Q2 report with such a minor increment and say, oh, this is down a little bit, Mr. Speaker. Well, Mr. Speaker, let me tell you what is up. The results are up, Mr. Speaker, and we will continue to get results, and everybody living in our province sees that, Mr. Speaker. And yes, the economy is booming, Mr. Speaker.
Monsieur le Président, le bilinguisme est une bonne chose. Fait l'envie des restes du province du Canada que le Nouveau-Brunswick, main dans la main, différents peuples, décident de travailler ensemble pour l'agrandissement et l'accomplissement d'une meilleure province. La langue, c'est un outil qu'on devrait se servir pour bâtir, non une arme qu'on se sert pour détruire ou diviser. Et là, des deux côtés de la Chambre, on s'accuse, vous divisez, vous divisez, vous divisez. Je vais être très clair. On ne veut pas que personne perde rien. On veut que tout le monde gagne. Parce que laissez-moi vous dire, quand on commence à enlever des droits acquis, on s'enligne vers le chaos, l'anarchie et les conflits. Ma question est pour le ministre de la Sécurité publique. Allez-vous vous servir de votre voix dans le comité pour s'assurer qu'il n'y a personne qui recule dans le dossier des langues officielles, parce qu'ici, on refuse de reculer d'un seul pouce. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Minister of Public Safety.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, I find it's very interesting. The only one that's talking about dividing this province is right on the other side of the aisle. We have said repeatedly, and I have said repeatedly, I fully support the right of both Francophones and Anglophones to receive service in their language of choice. I have requested and I pushed that it be done in a fair and equitable manner. Now, if the members opposite don't understand what fair and equitable is, that's on them. Google it. But at the end of the day, this is about New Brunswick coming together, French and English alike, regardless of what language you speak, and prospering and having a future in this province. It's the division that is caused by the members opposite that continue to fuel this issue rather than dealing with what really matters to New Brunswickers and ensuring constitutional rights are respected. And to the member opposite's question, I can assure you I have never and I never will do anything to reduce constitutional rights for Anglophones or Francophones in this province.
Merci pour la réponse. Prochaine question. Au mois de janvier, le 15 janvier 2021 exactement, le ministre de la Sécurité publique a été sur CBC pour dire que, idéalement, qu'est-ce qu'il faudrait faire dans le dossier des langues officielles? Il faudrait que toutes les parties participent en chambre pour être capables de débattre sur le sujet. Eh bien, nous autres, on demande ça depuis quelques semaines. Ça serait une excellente idée. On aurait tous les points de vue de tous les coins de la province, tous les partis seraient représentés, tous les parlementaires auraient chance d'ajouter leur voix. Ça a été dit l'an passé, en 2021, au poste de CBC par le ministre de la Sécurité publique. Je veux lui demander, est-ce qu'il croit encore la même chose aujourd'hui? Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, I've always believed that the best way democracy works is when committees are formed, when people come together, they discuss policy, they discuss ideas, and then they come out with some decisions from those discussions. And at the point when those decisions are made, if the official opposition then wants to criticize the decisions or applaud the decisions, that's fair game. But to come out and say that certain people shouldn't sit on a committee, that's nothing about the decisions, the final decisions. That's all about simply cancelling or muzzling any opposite voice. And I have always said that in order to have the best policy and the best decisions at the end of the day, you have to have all voices at the table. Now, we all agree on the same thing in relation to constitutional rights. How we implement bilingualism in a way that is effective for both Francophones and Anglophones is a discussion we need to have in this province. We've been doing it for 50 years. We talk about immersion. We talk about the education system. We have to talk about the Official Languages Act and ensure those rights are respected.
Deputy Member for Fredericton South and Leader of his party.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last Friday, CBC broadcast drone footage of homes in Carquette, now teetering on the cliff edge above the Baie de Chaleur. Thanks to the erosion caused by climatic upheaval, Jacqueline Maillet's front yard's already fallen into the sea. Up the shore from Carquette, the First Nation community of Eel River Bar has already had to demolish some homes and relocated others because of erosion from the sea. Here in the south, Bruce and Monica Hughes have lost their backyard and garage into the Keswick River. Their house is next. The UN Secretary-General says we're on the highway to climate hell with our foot on the accelerator. So at least, will the Minister for Climate Change establish a fund to help New Brunswickers relocate their homes, which are teetering on the road to ruin?
The Minister of Environment and Climate Change.
Very much, Mr. Speaker. To member across the way of the questions. There's money available right now going through the mitigation, I believe, the federal and provincial. Some of the examples he uses across the province, for example, are true. They're real. We will be attacking those and identifying them as we have been. Regarding the assessments across the province, just for an update, member, the government's committed to completing a province-wide risk assessment. And having said that, work on this action plan has begun. The staff have been meeting with other jurisdictions to learn about their experiences from Carquette through to other parts of the province. You mentioned the Hughes family as well. I believe they moved recently. It is terrible when you lose your home. The water's coming down the stream, the banks give way, and it doesn't hold up like it used to. It's important to understand that although we have a complete provincial risk assessment, and a lot of work's gone into this, adaptation is always the forefront, and for future mitigation too, to make plans for future development in flood areas as well, to identify those, because climate change is here, and it's not going to get any better in the very near future, so we need to adapt and be ready for it.
Member for Fredericton South and Leader of his party.
Monsieur le Président, des mesures urgentes sont nécessaires pour défendre les gens du Nouveau-Brunswick contre les conséquences des dérèglements climatiques. Nous seulement devons-nous sécuriser nos côtes et nos rives, mais nous devons aussi sécuriser notre approvisionnement alimentaire. Notre climat instable a réduit la production de maize, de tomates, de riz et de blé américain que nous importons. Cela fait grimper le coût des aliments aujourd'hui et réduira l'offre d'importation alimentaire à l'avenir. Nous devons collaborer avec nos provinces, nos voisines, pour devenir plus autosuffisants sur le plan alimentaire. Monsieur le Président, la ministre de l'Agriculture a-t-elle fixé des objectifs et un échéancier pour réduire notre dépendance à l'égard des importations alimentaires en augmentant notre approvisionnement alimentaire local?
Minister of Agriculture, Aquaculture and Fisheries.
Well, if the member opposite had listened to the throne speech, you would have seen that we have an increase in exports second only to Alberta at $14.7 billion. This is the highest we've had in over a decade. Seafood alone is at an all-time high at $2.2 billion, and we've had challenges, yes, but we continue to work for our sectors, finding new markets for our world-leading commodities. We are working with the Department of Health. We've seen a 24% increase in vegetable productions, 41 new greenhouses to promote year-round growth. We are working with ONB to extend fruit and vegetable production. We're working with 10 communities looking at food action grants. We've been to action 22 times. 1,100 New Brunswickers have joined Food for All Bilingual Network. We promoted 12 additional abattoir and local meat projects. We have worked with the Department of Health to encourage healthy food in hospitals hotels, food banks, soup kitchens, the Department of Education to assure healthy local foods for our children and our Indigenous communities. We work with the Department of Health to encourage healthy...
Minister. Chef de l'opposition officielle.
Mr. Speaker, it's very disheartening and alarming that New Brunswick has the second highest COVID-19 rate of cases in the country. Our health resources are stretched beyond belief, and if case counts continue to rise, our hospital system may soon be overwhelmed, or even more so than it already is. And Mr. Speaker, I asked questions on Friday what this government is planning if the situation gets worse. Is there a plan to activate New Brunswickers, and what would trigger government action? But all the minister could say is that they continuously to work day to day with the RHAs and with healthcare providers, but no real plan, Mr. Speaker, to offer us. While other governments are springing into action, this government seems to be sitting on its hands when it comes to this triple threat that we're seeing, Mr. Speaker. Why isn't this government more action-oriented in trying to address this serious public health concern? And what is the plan if the situation gets worse?
Minister of Health.
Much, Mr. Speaker, and I do appreciate the opportunity to stand and answer that question here today in the Legislature. And Mr. Speaker, on Friday we had the Chief Medical Officer come out and talk to the media, be available to media, answer all the questions. And I know, again, from a standpoint of having a plan, working with the RHAs, we're happy to do that, and we continue to do that. We know that the system is stressed, and we know that HR workers are again stressed, and they've been stepping up day in and day out and addressing the issues. But again, we work on a daily basis. We know that the RHAs with the CEOs and the trustees and the frontline workers are working together to make sure, again, that we're ready. But people can do their own help in making sure we're prepared as well. And I went through a list the other day. The Chief Medical Officer went through a list today. There's a list available, whether it's getting your vaccinations, getting boosted, wearing a mask if you wish, coughing into your hand or your sleeve, making sure you stay home when you're sick.
Mr. Speaker, RSV infections are up at least 800% in New Brunswick compared to last year, but Public Health has confirmed that it's not reporting RSV numbers and is uncertain as to whether it will do so in the future. And Mr. Speaker, we're bringing this up because it's very important as we're seeing an increase in cases in young children and hospitalizations, and we must take action, Mr. Speaker. We must have a government that is ready to take action. While RSV is not a reportable disease, I would suggest that they do report these numbers, as we need this information to make good public health decisions. And this information is important. The minister said it's important because people need the information to make decisions about protecting themselves and protecting others, Mr. Speaker. There's no downside in having good public baseline data on illnesses. So is the minister prepared to suggest to Public Health that this information should be compiled and reported, similar to flu and COVID numbers, because it's our children's health that is at risk here, Mr. Speaker, and we need some action from this government.
Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Again, I appreciate the question, and I think it's been clear all along that Public Health, has been available. They've been engaged. They answer many questions from the media, RTIs, the list goes on and on and on. And they continue to monitor various diseases like RSV. And again, when I see the reports that come out, and I am concerned as well as anybody else, and again, I've asked for a briefing on this, and I've asked if it should be reviewed and if it should be reportable. But again, Mr. Speaker, when it comes to people helping themselves, we know, or we should know, and the opposition should know, what needs to be done in order to protect ourselves and the people next to us. Make sure if you're sick that you stay home. Make sure you get your boosters. Wear a mask if you want. Cough into your sleeve. If you are feeling ill or have a prolonged temperature or whatnot, take your COVID test. Dial 811. Go to eVisit NB.
Time, Minister.
The list goes on.
Chef de l'opposition.
Monsieur le Président, l'Association médicale canadienne met en garde contre une résurgence de virus respiratoire saisonnier. Et comme j'ai dit à l'égard du COVID, c'est très alarmant qu'on voit maintenant le Nouveau-Brunswick numéro 2 pays pour le taux de cas. J'ai dit que nos ressources en santé sont au maximum. On est débordés. Les salles d'urgence sont débordées, Monsieur le Président. Alors que d'autres gouvernements prennent une action, des mesures immédiates, le gouvernement actuel ne semble rien faire concernant la résurgence des virus respiratoires dans la province, Monsieur le Président. Autant alarmants sont les infections que la VRS augmente au moins 800% au Nouveau-Brunswick par rapport à l'année dernière, surtout chez les jeunes. Moi, je suis préoccupé par ça, Monsieur le Président. J'ai des jeunes enfants, moi aussi. J'espère que le ministre réfléchit à ce que ces chiffres soient reportés. Mais je vais demander encore une fois, que compte faire le gouvernement pour réduire le risque de transmission et se préparer à une éclosion si cette prévision malheureuse se réalise?
Minister of Health.
Well, I've said it, and I say it again, that's no problem, Mr. Speaker, that the precautions that people can take are evident. Get your children vaccinated. Get yourself vaccinated. Get your flu shot. You should get a shot of flu serum to prevent disease. Mr. Speaker, the list goes on and on, what people can do to prevent the spread of viruses. And again, I'm not sure what the members opposite are getting to. If they want a mask mandate coming back, they should just come out and say that. But what I've asked my staff to do, I've asked the staff to report back to me, to do the research, and make sure, again, if this is something that we need to be doing to protect the public, then let's do it. But, Mr. Speaker, from a standpoint of protecting the public owns a lot of that power themselves, how to protect themselves. And I've gone through the list. I was mocked by the opposition over there, and again, that's all right. But the fact of the matter is, we're working day in and day out to make sure that people are protected here in the province of New Brunswick. That's going to...
Time for question period is over. Tabling of documents. Statements by ministers. Minister of Education and Early Childhood Development.
Monsieur le Président, le 9 novembre, le prix du 3 juillet 1608 a été remis à la Fédération des jeunes francophones du Nouveau-Brunswick lors d'une cérémonie au Québec. Le FJFNB regroupe plus de 8 500 jeunes en ensemble des écoles secondaires francophones. This prestigious award recognizes organizations in North America that provide outstanding service to a French-speaking community. I would like to congratulate the FJFNB on achieving this national distinction. C'est un prix qui rejaillit sur tous les membres et les partenaires de cet organisme jeunesse de notre province. Je invite tous les membres à se joindre à moi pour offrir nos félicitations à des affaires du FJFNB à favoriser l'engagement des jeunes francophones dans diverses sphères d'activité depuis plus de 50 ans. Merci, Madame la Présidente.
I recognize the member from Madawaska Grand Falls.
Madawaska, les lacs Edmundston. Merci, Madame la Présidente, je joins ma voix à celle du ministre pour féliciter la Fédération des jeunes francophones du Nouveau-Brunswick pour ce prestigieux prix qu'ils ont reçu. En fait, c'était le Conseil supérieur de la langue française a remis, lors de la 43e cérémonie de remise des insignes de l'Ordre des francophones d'Amérique, ce prix qui s'appelle le prix 3 juillet 1608. Écoutez, je pense que c'est une date mémorable, c'est une date de l'arrivée des francophones ici en Amérique du Nord. Donc, je félicite la Fédération pour leur leadership, leur projet tout aussi motivant l'un que l'autre, notamment Accro de la chanson, les projets qu'ils ont pour l'environnement. Et il ne faut pas oublier qu'il y a 22 représentants de cette fédération qui sont dans les écoles francophones de la province. Donc, un peu partout, et 8600 jeunes, c'est une voix à entendre, et puis nous sommes très fiers de ce prix qu'ils ont été reçus. Merci, Madame la Présidente.
I recognize the member from Kent North.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente. Je veux joindre mes collègues puis féliciter aussi la FJFNB pour le prix du 3 juillet 1608. Juste pour gentiment corriger ma collègue, par contre, l'arrivée des francophones, c'était 1604. 1608, c'était au Québec. Mais c'est blague à part, il mérite grandement ce prix. La FJFNB qui est extrêmement dynamique, qui forment notre relève constamment. Madame la Présidente, extrêmement innovateur. Fait que je veux féliciter les fondateurs, les bâtisseurs et les jeunes d'aujourd'hui qui continuent d'innover et continuent de faire en sorte qu'on a une organisation qui, dans le fond, travaille avec les jeunes francophones de partout en province avec un dynamisme inexplicable. Madame la Présidente, merci.
I recognize the Minister of Service, New Brunswick.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I am pleased to rise in the Legislature to mark National Housing Day as our province's new Minister responsible for housing. I acknowledge and thank our partners for their collaborative effort in addressing our housing challenges. Today, I reaffirm my commitment and ours as a government to bring a unified approach to addressing affordable housing in our province. In my short time as Minister responsible for housing, I have met with numerous stakeholders, constituents, and officials with all levels of government to discuss challenges, supports we currently have in place, gaps that remain, and opportunities for improvement. As part of our commitment to housing, we announced an investment of $102.2 million to build 380 new public housing units over the next 4 years and make immediate renovations to 110 vacant units. In addition, I recently joined my federal and provincial colleagues in Moncton to announce a combined investment of $1.6 million to establish a housing hub to support housing and development in rural areas. I also attended a federal and provincial announcement in Fredericton of a $560,000 investment to help create 14 new affordable housing units in Fredericton for individuals experiencing homelessness and persons with disabilities. Several other initiatives are underway, and more will be implemented to address the housing needs of New Brunswickers. We are also supporting New Brunswickers in a number of other ways by enhancing social assistance support, increasing minimum wage, introducing the Enhanced Energy Savings Program, eliminating the interest on the provincial portion of student loans, and establishing the Emergency Food and Fuel Benefit. These are just a few examples of the many initiatives we have rolled out to help support those who need it the most. Madam Speaker, in the short time that I have been responsible for the housing portfolio, Mr. Speaker, I'm sorry, I have made much progress in understanding the challenges that face our housing situation, but there is more work to do. Now, more than ever, we need to apply a holistic perspective in assessing the housing needs of New Brunswickers, and I look forward to working with my colleagues on both sides of the House and community partners on this portfolio. Building vibrant and sustainable communities is one of our government's top priorities. We are working to find solutions and make long-lasting changes for generations to come. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Deputy Legislature Jour.
Monsieur le Président, moi aussi, il me fait plaisir de me lever aujourd'hui en mon nom personnel, au nom de mes collègues, pour souligner la Journée nationale de l'habitation. Comme je l'ai dit en comité, le discours plus positif de la nouvelle ministre de l'Habitation est intéressant. Dommage que ça a pris 2 ans au gouvernement pour réaliser qu'il y avait un problème au niveau de l'habitation. Ça fait 2 ans qu'on le dit. Finalement, on passe à l'action. On a un projet de loi qu'on est en train de débattre en comité à l'heure actuelle, exactement pour tenter de régler certains problèmes au niveau de l'habitation. C'est bien. Espérons que ça va avoir du positif, mais ça va régler les problèmes à long terme. On a 2 sortes de personnes à l'heure actuelle. On a des gens qui se cherchent un appartement, qui sont dans la rue, puis on a des gens qui ne peuvent pas payer leur loyer. Quand la ministre dit qu'elle veut regarder l'ensemble, un des petits programmes que moi je chéris, c'est le fameux programme d'aide financière pour les personnes âgées, le fameux 400 $ au mois d'avril. Les personnes qui qualifient, c'est des personnes qui font moins de 35 000 $ par année. Des gens qui vivent probablement avec 17, 18, 19, 20 000 $ par année de revenus, qui ont des difficultés à payer leur loyer. Dans les médias, à court terme, est-ce qu'on pourrait bonifier ce programme-là? Ça aiderait énormément ces gens-là. Donc, c'est un programme qu'au ministère des Finances, puis la ministre aurait intérêt peut-être à discuter avec son collègue au cabinet pour bonifier
à moyen terme ou pour une courte durée, ce programme-là, de sorte à ce qu'on donne du temps au système, au marché, de créer ces appartements-là. Aussi, à court terme, le développement social a une multitude de loyers qui ne sont pas disponibles parce qu'ils ont besoin des réparations. Un petit peu d'argent à la ministre, au lieu de diminuer le budget de développement social, un petit peu plus d'argent pour réparer ces loyers-là, mettre à la disposition des gens des loyers pour ces gens-là qui sont dans la rue. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Member for Fredericton South and Leader of his party.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thanks to the Minister for the statement on National Housing Day. Mr. Speaker, I thought it would have been a perfect opportunity for the Minister of Housing, the new Minister of Housing, to announce the renewal of the rental cap for renters. It's almost the end of November. Christmas is coming. People have got their notices of rent increases, in some cases quite extraordinary rent increases, to take effect in the new year, Mr. Speaker, and they're wondering whether the cap is coming. And the Minister has still not indicated yes or no whether we're going to see a rent cap. You know, we have a provincial deficit in affordable housing, and it continues to grow every month. But the Minister has no staff. The Minister has no relevant legislation. The Minister needs to have the resources and the legislative mandate to do her job. So we have the New Brunswick Housing Act, Mr. Speaker. Let's hand it over to the Minister of Housing and fully implement it. We have the New Brunswick Housing Corporation, which has no real minister. Let's hand the New Brunswick Housing Corporation over to the Minister of Housing and let her lead the charge, Mr. Speaker, the charge to support the construction of non-market housing across this province, cooperative housing, non-profit housing, housing sponsored by community groups, housing sponsored by service organizations, housing sponsored by churches, housing sponsored by all kinds of civil society organizations, non-market housing where the rents are reasonable, where the rents are affordable. This is exactly how New Brunswick tackled the affordable housing crisis the last time in the late 70s. In the early and mid-1980s, Mr. Speaker, the New Brunswick Housing Corporation did that job with its own minister, with an extraordinary staff that were committed to ensuring there was affordable housing for all, recognizing that it is a human right. A human right. That was the basis of their work back then. That was the basis of the work over successive governments during that era, Mr. Speaker, and they succeeded. They succeeded, and we see that housing today still operating around the province as a result of that good work. So let the minister free, give her the legislation, give her the staff, give her the money, and let her go.
Presentation of petitions. Answers to petitions or written questions. Presentation of committee reports. Introduction of bills. Recognize the Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. Je propose que soit maintenant une lieu pour la première fois le projet de loi intitulé Loi modifie la loi créée le Conseil de Nouveau-Brunswick et matière de santé.
The Minister of Health moves that a bill entitled An Act to Amend the New Brunswick Health Council Act be now read a first time. Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. These amendments will change the size of the Council of the New Brunswick Health Council from 16 to 7 members, appointed on the basis of competency by the Lieutenant Governor and Council. The Chair will be appointed from amongst the 7 members. Mr. Speaker, these amendments will transform the New Brunswick Health Council to incorporate functions of health analytics currently with the Department of Health and long-term care analytics currently with the Department of Social Development. Le Conseil mettra l'accent sur le contenu des données des raisonnements comptables de l'exploitable afin d'accélérer l'amélioration des soins de santé, de rendement du système de santé et de le système de la population au Nouveau-Brunswick. Mr. Speaker, the amendments will create a data hub for health and long-term care data by reducing duplication of efforts for the health and long-term care systems. This will facilitate evidence-based policy and decision-making by equipping government with the data it needs to determine whether its healthcare investments are creating the desired results. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Is it the pleasure of the House that a bill entitled An Act to Amend the New Brunswick Health Council Act be now read a first time? All those in favour of the motion, please say yea. Yea. All those opposed, please say nay. My opinion, the yeas have it. I declare the motion carried.
An act to amend the New Brunswick Health Council Act.
Notice of motion. Minister of Finance and Treasury Board.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I give notice that on Tuesday, December the 6th of 2022, I shall move the following resolution, seconded by the Honourable the Premier. Que les chambres approuvent en général la politique budgétaire du gouvernement pour les comptes de capital.
The Minister of Finance and Treasury Board gives notice of motion for Tuesday, December 6th. Member for Fredericton South and Leader of his party.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With leave of the House to dispense with notice, I shall move the following resolution, seconded by the member for Kent North, that the Legislative Assembly recognize that affordable housing is a human right. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Do we have leave to dispense with notice? No. We just give notice for.
So what's next Thursday is what's next Thursday? The member gives notice for Thursday, December 1st.
The member for Fredericton South and Leader of his party gives notice of motion for Thursday, December 1st. Notice of opposition members' business. Government motions for the ordering of the business of the House. Recognize the Minister of Post-Secondary Education, Training and Labour.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, following routine business today, it's the intention of government that any bill introduced for second reading today, will go for second reading on Wednesday, November 23rd. Any bill that receives second reading today is referred to the Standing Committee on Economic Policy, and then we are going to consider second reading of Bill 19 and 20. And following that, Mr. Speaker, it's the intention of the government to adjourn the House and move into economic policy. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Second reading.
Bill 19.
Is it the pleasure of the House? Order, please. Is it the pleasure of the House that Bill number 19 be now read a second time? Minister of Justice.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to speak to the second reading of a bill entitled Fiduciaries Access to Digital Assets Act. Fiduciaries are appointed to distribute or manage a person's property and affairs when the person dies or loses the capacity to do so themselves. In this context, this includes an executor or an administrator of an estate, a committee appointed for an incapacitated person, an attorney under an enduring power of attorney, and a trustee. Digital assets are essentially any record of information that exists in electronic form, such as an email, audio, video, online music, loyalty points, frequent flyer points, social media posts, and family photographs. The law governing the ability of fiduciaries to deal with these traditional physical assets, is well developed and well known. Less clear, however, is a fiduciary's ability to gain access to and manage assets and record and records that exist only in digital form. Nor does the law make clear the duty of custodians of digital assets, like websites, emails, social media platforms, and to provide access thereto. The primary objective of fiduciaries' access to digital assets are Act is to make sure, to the extent possible, that a fiduciary has the same or similar ability to access digital assets as they do for physical assets. Your executor needs the ability to access your loyalty points program because they have a value. And that's a pretty good illustration as to what this is about. To accomplish this, the new Act will expressly confirm that fiduciaries have the right to access the digital assets of the account holder, thus allowing them to consider the account holder's property in keeping with their existing fiduciary duties. The Act will also alleviate actual or perceived barriers to access, particularly those found in service agreements that account holders sign when they open an online account. Among other things, it will provide that a fiduciary may take any action that could have been taken by the account holder if they were alive and of full capacity and is deemed to be an authorized user of the digital asset and to have the content of the account holder for disclosure purposes. To respect the account holder's intentions, access to the digital asset is subject to any restrictions set out in the document appointing the fiduciary and in the service agreement if put in place by separate action of the account holder after the new Act comes into force. This new Act is based on a Uniform Act developed by the Uniform Law Conference of Canada and is also consistent with a Model Act in place in 47 states in the United States where many online custodians are located. Finally, Mr. Speaker, while this new Act will provide a set of default rules, I want to take this opportunity to encourage all New Brunswickers to establish an estate plan which, among other things, provides clear instructions to their executors or trustees relating to their digital assets. Record your password, record your username, so that your executors can have access to these, what may well be valuable assets, but otherwise they would not be able to. That's the purpose of the legislation. I think it's good legislation, Mr. Speaker. It keeps up with the digital age in which we are entering. Thank you.
The Deputy Ambassador Justin Pisquet, St. Isidore.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Puis, Monsieur le Président, avant de commencer, je dirais que c'est plaisant de voir notre ministre de la Justice sur ses deux pieds de nouveau en chambre en bonne santé physique. Monsieur le Président, il semble un projet de loi progressiste qui permettra aux fiduciaux de s'acquitter plus facilement de leurs responsabilités. Nous reconnaissons le travail nécessaire pour agir en tant que représentant personnel et l'avantage de moderniser les outils pour le faire. Nos questions au comité porteront sur les discussions qui ont mené à la présentation de ce projet de loi, sur les aspects techniques du projet de loi et sur la protection qui seront en place pour l'appuyer. Là-dessus, Monsieur le Président, c'est les commentaires que j'ai à faire. Ça semble être quand même un projet de loi, comme j'ai dit, progressiste, projet de loi qui représente les années auxquelles nous faisons face, les années actuelles, en 2022. Mais c'est sûr et certain qu'au comité, on aura pas mal de questions à poser sur comment ça va être fait, puis faire sûr et certain qu'il n'y a pas de fraude qui peut s'installer dans la manière dont ça va être fait, parce qu'on parle de données électroniques, puis on veut faire sûr et certain que les personnes âgées. Je pense que c'est dans ce sens-là, Monsieur le Président, que le ministre a présenté son projet de loi, puis c'est justement ça qu'on va faire. On va poser plusieurs questions au niveau du comité. Toutes des questions faciles à répondre, je pense, mais il faut quand même que les gens soient informés. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
The member for Fredericton South and leader of his party.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's a pleasure to rise at second reading on the Fiduciaries Access to Digital Assets Act. This is important legislation, Mr. Speaker, and it's actually amazing we've managed to somehow get by without it so far. I want to acknowledge the Minister's second reading statement as one that is probably the most informative second reading statement that I've seen in a long time. And for this bill, speaking personally, I needed it. It's very helpful, provide a good context, some good detail, and I'll be referring to it at second reading, or at the committee stage as well, Mr. Speaker. You know, it gives me some comfort that this sort of legislation has been implemented elsewhere, that this has been based on that, and that there's experience with dealing with the question of fiduciaries accessing digital assets. The way digital information is stored these days keeps changing, and so if it's digital information that's older, it may be stored in one particular way. If it's newer, it's probably in the cloud, wherever that is, somewhere. It makes me think about trying to catch a fish with your bare hands in the shallows of a stream. You can see the fish, it's there, but trying to grab it and pull it out, not so easy sometimes. I think that's a fair metaphor or analogy here for some of what fiduciaries might need to access, because most of us probably aren't very organized about the way digital information is stored, Mr. Speaker. And as I said, it's changed over time. Even with organizations and so on, it's changed over time. And the way it used to be accessed may not be as easy to access it today. Our provincial archives have had quite the time and investment put into trying to keep on top of digital archival information, having the changing technology all of the time, and sometimes it's getting harder and harder to access older digital archival information because of the way it had originally been stored. So, Mr. Speaker, I hope during committee we can get at some of the experience elsewhere, and no doubt the Attorney General staff has dug into the positive and negatives of experience with existing legislation. I'm assuming as this sort of legislation has developed, since it's still a relatively new area of law, that the more recent legislation is built on what's been learned from maybe gaps or unexpected consequences of earlier legislation in other jurisdictions. I'm sure there are differences between that in the U.S. and here in Canada. So it will be interesting to explore some of that, Mr. Speaker, so that we can ensure that this legislation in our province meets the needs of fiduciaries who have an important responsibility when the time comes, and we want to make sure, obviously, that it's set up in a way that makes their job and their responsibility easy to carry out. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Deputy to Campbellton, Dalhousie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I just want to a few comments here, and I appreciated the information that the Minister has supplied us through second reading. It seems to be quite comprehensive, and I like the idea of using modern-day technology, bringing it up to speed, and I think it augurs well for the department to bring this up, and I think we're moving in the right direction. I would only hope that we could rely on the Minister whenever we bring our motion in for virtual sittings, that he will also look at virtual sittings in the same light, that it's time that we move into the modern age. It's time that we use technology to our advantage. So I just wanted to make that clear. I'll look forward to his support when we do that aspect of the virtual sittings. Thank you.
Is it the pleasure of the House that Bill number 2, excuse me, time machine, that Bill number 19 be now read a second time? All those in favour of the motion, please say yea. Yea. All those opposed, please say nay. In my opinion, the yeas have it. I declare the motion carried.
Fiduciaries Access to Digital Assets Act.
Pursuant to Standing Rule 42.1, Bill number 19 stands referred to the Standing Committee on Economic Policy.
Bill 20.
Is it the pleasure of the House that Bill number 20 be now read a second time? Minister of Justice.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm pleased to have this opportunity to speak about the Supported Decision-Making and Representation Act. This act will modernize the law relating to adult guardianship and establish a scheme for supported decision-making. It will allow for the appointment of persons to help those who are having difficulty making decisions on their own. The purpose of the Act is to protect and promote the autonomy and dignity of New Brunswickers who require support in relation to decision-making. The principle underlying the Act is that people should receive the support they need in order to make or participate in decisions about their lives to the greatest extent possible. It amazed me, Mr. Speaker, that this legislation will replace the Infirm Persons Act, which was enacted by this legislature in 1943 and contains many, many outdated concepts. The Infirm Persons Act, is presently in place and has been for many years, allows a court to declare that a person is mentally incompetent and appoint a guardian for that person. The guardian, who is known as the person's committee, then makes decisions on behalf of the infirm person. Mr. Speaker, the new Act will make several significant changes. First of all, it will eliminate the all-or-nothing approach, an approach where a person is either completely mentally unable or is not. The all-or-nothing approach will be removed, where a person is considered to be fully competent or incompetent, to what is known as a functional approach. This means that a person's capacity is assessed on the basis of their ability to make particular decisions, and they may have the capacity to make some kinds of decisions but not others. This approach to capacity is reflected in several aspects of the Act. For example, when the court appoints a guardian, who will now be known as a representative rather than a committee. The word committee never really stuck. In any event, most people didn't understand that it was not a committee as we know it. It was a singular individual. The authority of the representative can be tailored so that it reflects that the person requires help making decisions in some areas, but not in others. Again, the elimination of the all or none. Second, the Act will allow a person to be more involved in decisions that a representative is making on their behalf. Under the current law, the committee makes a decision based upon what they believe to be in the best interest of the person solely. They are not required to involve the person in the decisions or to take the person's wishes into account. Under the new Act, the representative will generally be required to discuss decisions with the person and make decisions that are guided by this person's wishes and preferences within the parameters of their ability. Third, the Act will establish options for supported decision-making. This is where a person is appointed to help another person make decisions rather than making all the decisions on their behalf. The Act will establish two options for this: a decision-making supporter who is appointed by the court, and a decision-making assistant who is appointed by the person requiring assistance, and their duties, powers with respect to the assets will be different. I believe, Mr. Speaker, that this legislation is overdue. Again, I expressed some surprise that it hadn't been changed since 1943, and the Infirm Persons Act is still in place. We've progressed greatly in the treatment of people with disabilities, and this Act will show that we are progressing in that area as well. So thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'm pleased to be able to introduce this for second reading.
The deputy to the back of the desk.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Monsieur le Président, je pense que les trois parties de la loi que le ministre vient d'énoncer peuvent aider probablement des personnes qui sont dans le trouble, puis des personnes qui ne sont pas nécessairement bien renseignées ou qui n'ont pas pu prendre de renseignements, des personnes avec des capacités mentales peut-être un peu moindres, Monsieur le Président. Et je pense que le projet de loi, quand même, modernise ce qu'il y avait déjà en place, parce qu'on sait, Monsieur le Président, qu'il y a beaucoup de personnes âgées ou des personnes vulnérables. On sait toutes des histoires d'horreur qui sont arrivées, quelles sortes de fraudes qu'ils ont passées à travers. Il y a du monde qui se sont fait escroquer, Monsieur le Président, puis je pense que Ceci donne un petit peu plus de latitude aux cours ou même aux personnes qui sont représentées par des personnes qui ont une procuration, Monsieur le Président. Je pense que ceci va quand même aider les personnes, si je comprends bien le projet de loi, va aider les personnes, pas nécessairement les personnes âgées, mais les personnes vulnérables qui ne peuvent pas prendre nécessairement des décisions. Ces personnes-là vont être capables d'être accompagnées parce que le projet de loi dit aussi qu'il y a des personnes qui sont capables de prendre certaines décisions et d'autres ne sont pas capables de les prendre. Ça fait que je pense que les personnes vont être accompagnées. Monsieur le Président, on aura sûrement des questions à poser lorsque le comité sera mis en place sur comment protéger, quelles sont les vraies façons, puis comment faire certain que la personne, soit que c'est nommé par la Cour ou que la personne a comme procurateur, comment faire sûr que, rendu à une certaine étape de leur vie, ces personnes-là peuvent être fiables, Monsieur le Président. Là-dessus, Monsieur le Président, c'est tout ce que j'avais à dire sur le projet de loi. Ça semble être enligné dans le bon sens. Puis, comme je vous le disais, Monsieur le Président, ça va nous faire plaisir de poser toutes les questions dont on a à poser. Faire sûr et certain que les gens qui nous écoutent ou les gens qui vont se servir du projet de loi dans les années futures répondent aux biens des personnes les moins, comment je dirais, nantis en capacité mentale. Monsieur le Président, je vous remercie là-dessus. Puis, au comité.
Le député de Fredericton-Sud est chef de son parti.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Ça me fait plaisir de lever dans la Chambre aux deuxième lecture afin de participer dans le débat sur le projet de loi 20, la loi sur la prise de décision accompagnée et la représentation. Mr. Speaker, in preparing for second reading debate, I was reviewing the bill and I can see quite a number of improvements over the old and current Infirm Persons Act, which are very positive. Very positive, Mr. Speaker, because the principle in this legislation seems to be that the default position should be that we need to be respectful of the agency of all persons, despite their whatever infirmity they might have, and put in place the necessary supports to ensure that they can use their agency in making decisions. So I think it's quite a progressive move from where we're at right now, Mr. Speaker, with the Infirm Persons Act. And the Minister is correct. The language under the Infirm Persons Act around committees is kind of misleading and confusing at first when you if you have to engage with it in some way. There's a lot. There are a lot of issues around ensuring the supported decision-making and representation in these cases works in the best interests of the person involved, Mr. Speaker, and so this deserves careful attention at committee. It does fall into that category of bill, Mr. Speaker, where I believe committee members would benefit from the ability to call a few witnesses. Of course, that's up to the Legislative Assembly as a whole to provide the ability for the committee to do that. But we need to get this right. I feel this is a very, very important piece of legislation. The Minister presented it with the gravitas it deserves, and I think we need to treat it the same way at committee. So I'm hoping there'll be some reasonable consideration given to the possibility of providing committee with the mandate to call a couple of witnesses around this. We want to make sure we get it right, and that the intent here, Mr. Speaker, that is clear, to be respectful of the agency of all people in their decision-making about their lives and their well-being is respected. And so, Mr. Speaker, I look forward to being a participant in the discussions at committee, and we'll perhaps pursue some things before we get there to have a better understanding of the ins and outs of the bill, at least have similar legislation operates in other provinces. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Plaît-il à la Chambre que le projet de loi 20 soit maintenant lu une deuxième fois? All those in favour of the motion will please say yea. Yea. All those opposed, please say nay. In my opinion, the yeas have it. I declare the motion carries.
Supported Decision-Making and Representation Act.
Pursuant to Standing Rule 42.1, Bill number 20 stands referred to the Standing Committee on Economic Policy. Pursuant to orders of the day, call on the acting Government House Leader to adjourn the House.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the House be now adjourned.
The acting Government House Leader moves that the House be now adjourned. All those in favour of the motion, please say yea. Yea. All those opposed, please say nay. In my opinion, the yeas have it. I declare the House to now be adjourned. Thank you, members.